To follow up the original Final Fantasy is certainly an interesting task, to say the very least. Naturally, you'd probably want to take the base game, tweak it, make all the improvements needed, and of course make the sequel bigger and better, right?
This is pretty common for games in the most recent of generations. Usually we see a story that is just as complex or hell, even a bigger world, more gameplay and all that jazz. Still, for a game that turns so many heads, following up with something similar is, well, risky. It could alienate some fans with seeming too similar or being a lazy cash grab. Change up the formula too much, though, is now just abandoning what made the original so successful. It is a balancing act, and to be honest, there really is no right answer as a whole. It truly depends on the game and the changes that are made.
Of course, we now know that Final Fantasy II did the common trend back in the day. The sequel was radically different, changed a lot of things, and honestly, is kind of considered controversial. Nowadays, a lot of people call it one of the worst games in the series. Is that true? Also, hypothetically, if this game flopped and sunk the franchise, could we refer to this game as Final Fantasy?
The term black sheep is very common for the online video game community. The phrase refers to the clear distinction of sheep, obviously, but used for a strange family, oftentimes, problematic. For video games, it is just simply the odd one out that deviates the formula. As stated, the earlier generation of video games saw more risks with their titles, where now it is safer and a lot more cost-effective to just copy-paste the original for the sequel. Throughout the decades, many successful franchises have their own black sheep in their catalog. Zelda 2, Castlevania 2, Devil May Cry 2, Super Mario Bros. 2, Dark Souls 2. Are we seeing a trend yet? It's not always a direct follow-up, mind you, as it usually is just simply controversial. Not the controversial we see today with lobotomites on random internet places spout the worst takes of all mankind, but controversial for a game breaking the standard and what we knew for video games back then. If unfamiliar with Final Fantasy II, you can puzzle out that this all fits the bill into this type of game. Commonly referred to as a low period for the mainline series of Final Fantasy. Many people talk negatively or simply not at all. I mean, with Final Fantasy, there seems to be supporters of every game, even some of the ones that are considered the worst. My plan is to go down the line of games over this little channel's runtime, so we'll have to ruffle some feathers eventually. Is that the case with Final Fantasy II? Well, stick with me and we shall see. Every Final Fantasy game I have played has some good points to talk about, including ones that are objectively a little worse off.
Well, now I guess we can see if this game is actually worthy of the negative reception it currently holds. I mean, it deviated a lot from the original Final Fantasy, but hey, maybe that's good. Anyways, this is Final Fantasy II, originally released for the NES back in 1988. Let's dive in.
Following up the Final Fantasy that started it all was an obvious project. Most of the team kept the same here, but I'll mention some as they were breezed over if even mentioned in my first video. Hironobu Sakaguchi is the main director and driving force for the Final Fantasy series up until the 11th installment. Having an assumingly bigger team and budget was going to help, but they had no initial plans to follow up their mega hit. Nobuo Uematsu is back as a series composer and is still making god-tier music for the sequel. Yoshitaka Amano is someone I did not mention, but is the main character designer and artist up until the 6th game. If you have not seen his work, yes you have. His work is minimal nowadays, but still assists with the iconic titles for each game to this very day. His art is very unique, it stands out and is super cool to look at. Also, we have a larger focus on specific characters for this story and game as opposed to the first. Development took just under a year, I mean, literally 364 days. It released December 17th, 1988 to Final Fantasy I's release of December 18th, 1987. That's kinda neat. Sales were solid, not hitting the strides of the original, but that makes sense. Reception was also very good, but limited. See, the thing is that Final Fantasy II was only released in Japan. Final Fantasy I was released in 1990 for the States, and there were plans on doing that as well. Development time led to a cancellation and had to shift work on the Final Fantasy IV, localizing due to the Super Nintendo being out already and all that stuff. This is why we saw the Final Fantasy IV gets the Final Fantasy II named treatment for the SNES, and this is really god-awfully fun to sort out, isn't it? Final Fantasy II has many re-releases since then, and there are more than enough ways to play it now. I will get into the releases near the end a bit more, but as you can probably tell, I played and am using the Pixel Remastered version as it is your best bet when looking at a quality and accessibility standpoint. With the re-releases, the reception began to worsen over time, usually ranging in the 60 to 70% area depending on the release. Its legacy is one that is often skipped over as a result, which aside from people like me who would get that nagging feeling if not playing one of the numbered entries and just skipping over it, it's what a lot of people do. And I guess that might be the biggest thing to ask, is this game even worth playing today? So many games vying for your attention, we gotta be selective these days. Of course, there's only one way to find out. We get thrust into a fantasy world, albeit very different from what we were used to. Not the typical medieval locales we see here, but a lot more technology, armies, and civilizations. The biggest change we see is a lot more of an active story. Final Fantasy I was placed in a world ruined thousands of years prior, with the team sent to restore that dying world. This world is in the process of dying a terrible, terrible death. You can name your team, but they have canon names here, so we will use those for the story's sake. The game immediately starts out with the battle of your team of 4 teenagers versus 4 Black Knight Riders. These don't look like your typical goblins and rats. They are, of course, endgame enemies. We get wiped. Starting with an unwinnable battle is pretty bold. The protagonist of this story, Firion, awakes with Maria and Guy. The 4 of the teens seem to be friends and grew up in the nearby castle town of Fynn. Escaping an Empire invasion led them to get left for dead outside a nearby town of Altair. Found by a rebel alliance, they were taken in and probably only lived to the most OP healer in the world. 3 of them wake up by White Mage Minwu and Princess of Fynn, Hilda. They are based in Altair as the rebel base to take out the invaded empire. Of course, we are glossing over the absence of the 4th party member, Leon. Leon and Maria are siblings, but was not found amongst the 3 of the survivors. With no body found and the fact that we had to name him, we as a player can deduce that we will eventually run into him, but the team keeps the hope that Leon may be alive and asks to join the rebel army to avenge their hometown. Princess Hilda is running as de facto leader since the King of Fynn is bedridden, and not doing really great at all. She turns them down for being too young and not wanting to involve children in the war that she's fighting.
Look, I get that they are children, and I am not the leader, of course, but they're close enough to adulthood. You guys are on the losing side of the war, and I don't know if you could be picky right now. You can't just selectively choose who you want in your army. Well, pop off, Queen.
The game starts with the 3 aimlessly wandering around as they end up deciding to look for Leon in the wake of the refusal. So already got a drastically different approach here, but we still came in at a midway point through the story. Jumping ahead to parts of the story, let's talk about one of my favorite parts of the narrative in general, the villain. The Emperor Matthias reigns over Palamecia, a large militarized castle nestled in the mountaintops surrounded by a massive desert. For unknown motivations, the army conducted a worldwide conquest in such an efficient time. He not only has a powerful magic arsenal, but seems to have demonic powers to summon monsters to bolster his army. It seems our Emperor is a scheming and efficient bastard. There are 4 other regions of note, being Fynn, Kashwan, Diest, and Mysidia. Mysidia can be skipped. It has stayed neutral and hermit-like for hundreds of years and sits off the main continent anyways. Kashwan and Fynn have had a seemingly healthy alliance, no thanks to the part to Hilda, Fynn, and Scott of Kashwan being set to wed. A conjoined kingdom was probably in the books sometime down the line, but they had a clear, healthy alliance prior. Kashwan gets overrun with monsters, however, no thanks in part to the high-ranking noble and General Morgan. Hailing from Kashwan and serving the Fynn military, probably working as an ambassador of some sorts, his knowledge of both kingdoms most likely served fruitful in gaining an upper hand. Kashwan is left to ruins, any survivors fled to nearby towns. Fynn came next and a similar fate happened. Of course, for Morgan's betrayal, he was gifted a high-ranking officer title for his efforts. The last kingdom of DS went silent and has not received any assistance. They are known for a series tradition of Dragoon Knights, clad in dark armor with spears and affinity for dragons. The Wyvern Riders and Dragoons would have come in to stop the invasion, but cannot be reached due to their secluded isle they live on, being probably hard for people to, just stop by and see. We of course don't know for some time that Emperor Matthias already took care of them, poisoning the waters that the Wyverns drank from, killing all Dragoons, Wyverns, and even the women and children. Like I said, this villain is cruel and efficient, and it is pretty damn cool to see. I really like the change to a darker story here. Now I don't mean edgy and disturbing dark. The plotline is not too uncommon for fantasy nowadays, but still different for the time. Stakes feel a little bit more real, and so do the threats and eventual saving of the world. The villain is not some evil spirit, monster, or god, just a man who seems to have gained some dark powers. It is a great tone setter for the game to show the might of the Empire, getting one shot by the Black Knights, showing how these are just endless mooks that took you out. Hilda was right to refuse you. You have no shot against Matthias if his generic knights can shove you aside like trash. While the times we see Mateus in person are relatively minimal, his presence is set immediately and lingers anywhere throughout the game. Back to the game, we can step out in the world proper and hear the overworld music. It's a great track that I wanted to touch upon. Keeping form from what I already established, here we see a much more somber and melancholic feel. Comparing it to the first, the cheery, adventurous overworld is completely contrasted. Similar to how I feel in Alapgard in the Dragon Quest series, its melody offers up the image of a dying world, one that we see in real time for Final Fantasy II. It is definitely one of my favorite overworld themes in a JRPG. We of course can head north to Fynn, stopping by a small town of Gitrea in between for rest. We obviously have wild encounters here, they all seem identical from the first, in terms of the battles, but let's finish the battle and see the biggest change. Hey, so if you saw my Quest 64 video, I made a comparison to this game and its mechanics, offering a similar way to progress. While I did give Quest 64 a near 2-hour handjob, the battle was sorely not one of its greater aspects, and I had to dunk on it.
It's not your standard system, you don't have experience points in the broad sense. Each stat has its own EXP and works in fashion like Final Fantasy II, which is also considered to be, well, not that great.
As I said, the battle mechanics worked out of Final Fantasy I, very easy to understand, save for a few new things. Change 1 is the blank slate of characters. Common in many RPGs, you are given a cast of characters to level to your own devices. Characters have some innate stats and do well to lead them to a preferred playstyle, but you really don't need to comply with that. All characters can equip any weapon, dual wield if they prefer, and all characters can learn any type of spell. So like Quest, this has the initial idea of being super neat, as whatever you use, you level up. Furion uses swords in battle, his sword proficiency levels up. Guy swings down the axe, same to him. Magic works in a similar way as well. All stats are slowly leveled up, more so when actually utilizing said stats in battle. You get HP for getting hit, strength for hitting, MP for casting spells. On paper, this is cool. Works something you might see in an MMO, or hell, Elder Scrolls does this fantastically as well. In practice, this is an abysmal grind that's lopsided to hell and back. For weapons, it's best to stick to one weapon type for each character to get the most out of a weapon. You may see an untrained weapon and you want to equip it since the stats might look higher, but this affects hit rate and overall power in battle that doesn't really tell you. Stats too make this game either too damn easy or too damn hard. It's pretty easy to break your characters by having them just beat the shit out of each other over and over to max HP. It certainly is a way to play, and the easiest by far. Regardless of how you play, grinding is a must just to keep up though. Not too awful sounding for a JRPG, I guess, but finding that good middle ground is about as useful as the wyverns. Get it? Because all the wyverns are dead. Joke. Laugh. Magic is a cool setup, as I said, but it probably struggles some of the most here. First of all, the magic stat is not necessarily here. Instead, we see magic interference. This is affected by equipment, and heavy armor will raise it. If you want to keep a decent spellcaster, you will need to keep that in mind. Rods and some weapons do have low rates of magic interference, but the spread of weapons is not equal. Some weapon types do not have as many as others, so you gotta pick and choose. You find tomes and teach them to one of your characters of preference. It is used up when you use this tome. The level of spells costs the same in Magic. Level 1 Blizzard costs 1 MP. They also have a limited number of slots, but this is pretty large, enough to try out some spells on each character. The biggest problem I have is leveling the magic is so damn slow. Good luck evening out your magic. It is pretty much just focus on 1 or 2 spells. Healing takes probably some of the longest. RPG vets know how many times you heal in RPGs. I did not max my spells out by the end of this game. Granted, I gave everyone spells and healing to try to preserve MP in dungeons as much as possible, but still, Maria was my go-to healer for the majority of the game, and by endgame, she did not even hit her cap of 16. Some spells aren't super crazy to have high level, like the status moves, protect, shell, and stuff. Higher levels boost the effect, but I do not have enough brain power to figure out the formula that would go into calculating how effective leveling these are. They are fine to level up, but I doubt this will save you if you're struggling on a boss and think that the only way to beat it is leveling up protect 1 or 2 levels. Magic is underpowered in places. AoE casting does pretty much no damage at all. Even moderate healing levels don't even crack 1,000 at the endgame for me. Lastly, there are just things that irk me like Asuna. it heals any status effect like in most games. Leveling up will heal more status effects. One of the kickers is the game just doesn't tell you and will just simply miss if the Suna is not high enough for you. The time it takes to invest into leveling up your magic to worthy heights is, simply put, not worth it. However, due to exploiting weaknesses, it is good to have on the team. Now, of course, I'm not talking about healing buffs, so they're self-explanatory and you should have them at least, but enemies may completely negate physical damage, or magic weaknesses will do a whole loads of damage. It can and will destroy some enemies and bosses, but neutral resistances to enemies with magic seem pretty underwhelming. The TLDR is leveling up system sucks. My opinion is to break the game or have a neutral spread for all your characters. Some bosses will suck if you don't at least have some magic proficiency. At the end of it all, it's a massive flaw in the game that really breaks it for many. Being blunt, this mechanic is not thought out well, and the main reason why so many do not like this game, and I cannot blame anyone who thinks that. I think the idea behind it is cool, but it's not conclusive for a standard RPG. That's pretty much the majority of what I have to say on this battle portion. It's the biggest roadblock for those wanting to play. And unfortunately, it's not the only one, but it definitely stopped me when I first played this game. Back into the story, we move into Fynn to see it overrun by the Palamecian army. Any guards you get too close to will immediately attack you. At your level, you will die. Looking for clues on anything leads you eventually getting to the bar. One of the only citizens that driven out, imprisoned, or killed was the poor bartender, stuck with serving drinks to them for the remainder of his business, I'd assume. Luckily, he is a secret member of the Wild Rose Rebellion, led by Hilda. Using the code phrase Wild Rose gives us access to a secret bunker. Now, you may think a code word is just some key item or in-game flag that progresses, but it works a lot differently. The password system is an odd mechanic to say the least. Many characters may have additional dialogue or ways to progress if you tell them the right thing. Many keywords can be learned and added to your password system. You store these and get stuck on roadblocks until giving the necessary character the right phrase or even key item to present. This is a neat mechanic, albeit kind of feeling like bloat. Many points in the story will not progress until you give NPC A phrase B. Learning them all is really not too bad. Talk to any and every NPC. Most code words come from important characters anyways. Giving them out though is annoying, leaving a trial and error to spam any and all code words for additional flavor text or just to simply move on. Honestly, one of the best quality of life features in the Pixel Remaster was the red highlights, basically showing any keywords that an NPC will react to. This allows you to move past this without as much of a headache, given you have the right phrase, of course. All in all, this mechanic ends up being pretty superfluous in the whole of it. No surprise it's really never saw a return since. After cliffhanging the hidden basement, we go downstairs to see a man in bed. This is Scott, Crown Prince of Kashwan. He survived the assault in his kingdom, but made it to the bunker only to lose to his wounds. He talks to us and informs us of Borgen's defecting, as well as his last words. In his final moments, he gives us his ring, something we give to Hilda to inform her of her fiancé's fate, and to not give in, most likely. He passed away after telling them this, and the team returns to Altair and presents the rebellion with the news. Hilda is grief-stricken, but the ring gives her a determination to fight for her lover's sake, and recognizes the party's bravery in this covert mission inside the invaded town. We are formally initiated into the rebellion proper. In the town, I should mention, is Gordon, younger brother to Scott. He is not fully relevant now and sits as one of the survivors of his kingdom, just kinda hanging out. Weaker and more cowardly, he is devastated by the loss of his brother as well, and seems to be at a standstill, just moping around since the loss of his home. With our party officially ready to fight back, we finally get onto our game's main task, defeating the Empire. Our first task is getting Mithril, a rare ore to produce weapons to fight against the Empire. We want any shot, we kinda have to get that. A contact of the rebellion is Joseph, a well-respected man of a town named Salaman to the far north. The advisor to the rebellion, White Mage Minwu, joins us to help us assist in the procurement of Mithril. Minwu is a sick character, design-wise, and is also just very powerful. He comes in overleveled as all hell with high levels of white magic. A mechanic to this game is the rotating fourth party member. Furion, Maria, and Guy are all permanent, but the fourth is a constant rotation of characters. This is cool for plot and whatnot, but does have some issues. First up, not all characters are Minwu. They are not all as powerful and will need to be leveled too. They usually come in underleveled, I feel. The time when they leave the party is also not clear on a first playthrough too. Some characters leaving and rejoining later in this adventure, leaving a blind player potentially investing too much time or hell even too little if they tried to skip them using them a lot. The good news is that all the sub-party members are super cool. I like most of them and they have some good character depth. I cannot say the same for the main cast. Furion is the protag, Maria is the girl, Guy is dumb, strong, and talks like Tarzan, and apparently also speaks beaver. That's really it. They have minimal dialogue in most cutscenes, and they really do not have anything of substance either. Not saying the side characters are super deep, this is an NES game after all, but I feel like an effort was made for them, unlike the main three. Ranting aside, we head up far north and Joseph refuses to help us. Due to General Borgen's meddling, many villagers in the nearby towns were kidnapped and forced into slavery. This includes his daughter Nellie. Held as blackmail, Joseph is forced to bend the knee to the Empire. Luckily, some mithril we seek is in the mines where those slaves are being forced to dig into. We head there and rescue many villagers, including Nellie. We fight a captain of the Empire as our first official boss and take the mithril back to the rebellion. We get a fighting chance finally, and are tasked with our next mission: stop the Dreadnought. A powerful and massive airship being constructed over in a military-occupied city of Bask. The three, still with Minwu, head out to try to stop the construction finishing. Airships are not new, but who is new is Sid. Any Final Fantasy player should know the name. Reoccurring in pretty much every subsequent game, his role varies. He acts as a ferryman for hire in this game. Sid used to work for Finn, but retired to run a mercenary flying business. For a price, you can get transported to damn near almost any city in the world. He can take you there to avoid enemies on foot, which is pretty nice, especially in the early game. His design of the airship was modeled for the Dreadnought, something we may need later. We head to Bask and run through the sewers only to barely make it in time. Stopping us at the other end is the other officer of note under the Palamecian banner, the Dark Knight. Nameless and faceless, he commands power and respects it from the rest, outranking others like Borgen. He expects us on arrival, seemingly, and tells us the project is finished, only to fly away and begin the Dreadnought's assault. The Dreadnought lays waste to many towns in the vicinity. Anyone unfortunate enough to be outside during the air raid gets us killed, and the town is now littered in craters and debris. Once again, this is pretty dark, as you see no one in a city that used to be littered with people. All the NPCs that were outside are assumedly dead. With one failure under our belt, we recoup our losses and return to Altair. It was damaged, but many were able to flee into the hideout at the very least. With some research and asking around, Sid gives us the key we need to destroy the seemingly impossible giant of an airship. A magical flame known as Sunfire can be tossed into the heart of the engine, guaranteeing its destruction. Something with this power is of course locked away, in a keep over the watch of the Kashwan Empire. The way to access it is quite tough. The voice of a Kashwan royal bloodline is needed, or a magical item known as the Goddess Spell. Both come in obviously small quantities. Scott and Gordon were the only two remaining in the royal line of Kashwan. Scott is dead and Gordon was lost in the chaos of the Dreadnought's assault. His body was not recovered, but with no leads, we seek the Goddess Spell. It's locked away in a shrine to the far reaches of the north. We seek to head there. With the heavy snow and rough terrain though, we cannot reach the cave safely. Enlisting the help of Joseph again, the three seek to talk to Joseph while Minwu leaves the party and dedicates his time to easing the pain of the King of Finn. It's only a matter of time before his passing, leaving a little else to do, but make his last moments better. Joseph quickly agrees, indebted to saving his only daughter, and picks up his spellcraft to help us traverse the northern peaks. Joseph is our next character, and his time is much shorter than Minwu's overall, but at least comes in with a solid monk archetype and similar stats to boost. The cave is not too much a note, but defeating the guardian of the cave nets us the item we needed, the Goddess Spell. Not terribly short of a victory lap, however, occurs as we get ambushed by General Borgen, in the flesh. His scheming, underhanded methods of selling out fit within his character, as he attempts to kill you here and loot the bell off our corpses after we did all the heavy lifting to get the bell in the first place. We get into a boss fight with the general. As you would expect of his personality, he actually isn't too strong. He goes down, and killing him may actually put a dent into the Empire's plans. In an act of desperation, however, Borgen does set off the booby-trapped cave they are still in. A boulder is sent to crush them all. His failure to retrieve the bell would mean death by Mateus, so instead he needs to crush all hope here. He laughs, expecting to see the crew in hell before being crushed by his own trap. Not fast enough to escape in time, Joseph ends up blocking the boulder for a temporary stop. Impossible to stop it completely, Joseph commands Furion to leave and return to Altair. He doesn't want to see the teens die at the hand of the bastard's trap to take him down too. Furion, Guy, and Maria narrowly escape harm, but Joseph is killed by the boulder. The party laments his passing and returns with even more vengeance. Joseph wasn't a long-lasting party member, but he seemed to strike a chord with the team. Older in age, he probably saw some of his daughter in the teens. I would imagine their risking of a life to rescue his daughter spurred a fire in him to get back at the man who imprisoned her. Not only getting to kill him, but thwarts the trap in a sense, leaving the rebellion with a net positive, so to speak. Salamand is stricken by Joseph's death, as is Hilda and the Wild Rose. With another death added to the pile they needed to avenge, the three head for Kashwan Keep. Inside the keep is a surprisingly familiar face, Gordon. We team up with him as his resolve has hardened after Scott's death. He meant to avenge his people by getting the Sunfire on his own, but he's still too weak in the process. T joins up, and true to his words, he is really freaking weak. He needs to catch up, but luckily the keep is not too difficult for us. We end up obtaining the Sunfire and set out to infiltrate the Dreadnought. In an odd series of events, Cid's airship is raided by the Dreadnought during a transport, which just so happens to have goddamn Princess Hilda on it.
The one damn time she leaves the hideout and immediately gets captured. Fucking lovely.
Well, the ship obviously has to make some stops at some point for refueling, and the four sneak on board the ship, rescue Hilda and Cid, and reach the engine room. The Sunfire is thrown in, and true to Cid's word, the Dreadnought begins to fall apart. The Dark Knight makes another appearance, yelling at the team, and this time it throws off Maria, as she seems to recognize the voice. Gee, I wonder who it might be. The party can't finish the thoughts they had as they narrowly escape before explosion hits. Luckily, they're able to make it to safety, with a massive victory in tow. Unluckily, the game really loves not having you have a victory for too long. The team gets to return to hear the dying words of the King of Finn. He passes on, giving the team a sorrowful goodbye, but not without the team continuing their desire for victory. Hilda locks herself in a room, seemingly due to the death of her father. I mean, fair. However, the rest of the Wild Rose cannot sit still. Gordon, with much more courage now, gained with his time in the party, leaves the three, but maintains as the head of one of the leaders of Wild Rose. In lieu of his late brother and Hilda's grieving, the army begins to work on the assault to take back Finn. Finn is currently held up by one of the monster general Mateus summons, as he's still residing in Palamecia. Without a giant airship to halt our advance, the army can begin their planning. During this, the two teams are dispatched for separate missions. Minwu leads a solo quest to obtain the legendary Tome of Ultima, magic sealed away by the Mysidian Hermits. This magic could be vital to defeating the Empire. Of course, the second team is the Iconic Three, tasked with finding out the fate of Deist and the Dragoon Warriors. No one knows their fate yet, but the team needs to procure sea travel to make it to the country. We find a fairy woman able to assist us. She turns out to be a pirate ready to rob us in the open waters. We end up trouncing her crew pretty easily, and she elects to join us, as we do not kill her or her men. Layla is our next party member, and we get her for quite some time now. She travels with us to Deist, as we have now control of a boat. At the abandoned castle, we see no one in sight and learn of the grisly fate. A lone woman and child remained here in hiding, looking after the last of the wyverns. The wyvern is unfortunately poisoned beyond saving and will eventually die. The woman's husband is actually a dragoon, and while being the sole survivor of the dragoon's legacy, he left a long time ago, seemingly seeking Ultima as well to best the Empire. He went missing and is yet to return. Helping out the small crew here will at least be in the best of our interest. The poison wyvern luckily has an offspring waiting to be incubated. We need to take the egg to the wyvern's cave to let it do its egg thing, but we established the waters were poisoned. The fixable method here is quite easy. It's all at the hands of some monsters, so we just need to kill them at the bottom of the caves and place the egg. The wyvern will hatch in due time, but unfortunately the mother does pass away upon our arrival. Mother and son remain to watch over the baby's gestation, and we end up leaving. With not the best news in tow, we return to Altair, and Furion has to meet with Hilda. She tries to fuck him, but turns out to be a monster, and Layla, Maria, and Guy storm in before the monster kills Furion. Discovering that Hilda was a fake, we discover the real Hilda is still captured by the Empire. Mateus did an old switcheroo in the Dreadnought and kept her prisoner. Goading the Wild Rose into foolish acting, he offers up Hilda as a prize to the Colosseum's victor, this Colosseum that sits at the base of his castle. Gordon is set to rescue Hilda and swaps out with Layla at this time. Layla decides to roost in Wild Rose and her crew joins the rebels to take back Finn. Gordon gets a redemption seemingly here as we traverse to the Colosseum at the foot of the Palamecian Mountains. Trap 1 is getting locked into a cage fight with the behemoth, but we do get to meet the Emperor face to face for once. Of course, we can't settle our fight here as Mateus Trap number 2's us into the Palamecian dungeons. We get rescued by the Thief of Wild Rose and minor character Paul, luckily, and Gordon rescues and escapes with Hilda. Furion's party remains to draw the attention of the enemies and guards and let Hilda escape. All return safely, and with this rescue comes determination to finally take the assault to Finn. We infiltrate, rejoined by Layla, and make our way to the throne room, downing the monster holding the seat. Another victory hits here as the Wild Rose army makes camp in Finn, and the castle and town are restored to its former glory. Having seemingly an actual foothold now against the threats, all focus shifts to the Ultima Tome. Minwu has yet to return, and the team is tasked with assisting him. The tome is locked away in a giant tower, needing multiple key items to access. There's a lot of dungeons back and forth here, and I want to mention something I haven't really said yet. The dungeons kinda suck. At first, I did not mind them a whole bunch, but this part in particular was just icing on the cake. The random encounter rate is so damn high, and the dungeon design feels more intentionally douchey. The biggest offender here is the fake room epidemic. There are many instances where there are floors with a couple doors, and only one of these doors is leading to the actual next floor. All the rest are dead ends for the most part. Trial and error here is really what you have to do, but the high encounter rate and the fact that entering a room puts you in the middle of a room almost always guarantees an extra encounter before you can exit that said room. So it is a guessing game with the added effect of an extra battle for your troubles. So many dungeons have this puzzle, if you can word it that way, of a room with 3 or more doors and figure it the fuck out. If this was the gimmick of one dungeon, I'd let it slide. Every dungeon having this up to the final dungeon is not interesting in the slightest. It makes this one of the worst parts of this game.
This would be the part where I make some sort of joke or pun about doors, but I didn't want to open up that conversation and close the conversation on how the dungeons actually suck. Open and close like a door.
So after a fetch quest spanning multiple dungeons and swapping around so many items, we gain a crystal rod, one that will give us passage into the Mysidian Tower. During the approach to the tower, we end up getting swallowed by a massive whirlpool sinking the ship. We wake up to find ourselves inside Leviathan, guardian of the tower. It is an effective guardian, as we come to find an entire village of people stuck down here. The beast devours anyone with a rod in their possession, and we see the unfortunate victims of that. Unfortunately, our ship, along with Layla, are missing. The ship is most definitely destroyed, but the missing companion sucks a bunch. In the game's fashion, we may expect to see a new party member soon. Upon entering the makeshift village, we come across a man clad in dark armor among the residents. This is our last party member we have yet to meet, and the last of the living dragoons, Ricard. He learns of our search for Ultima and joins with us to take out the Empire. We heard about the woman in Deist having her husband go missing in search for the tome. By some stroke of luck, getting chopped by Leviathan seemed to save him the fate of his comrades at the very least. Ricard is pretty damn cool too. Being the first to show off the classic Dragoon design to boot, he has a plan to get out of the beast, and it's quite simple now that he has some capable fighters with him. We kill a parasite in the Leviathan's mouth and board a ship that was devoured, but not destroyed. The worm's defeat causes the beast to spit the ship out, giving us our escape. So that short-lived plot point is at least now done with at the very least. These 4 enter the tower and begin the ascent to the top. It is sort of a trial ground for those attempting to gain the ultimate magic. It houses many bosses to test their skills. At the top is Minwu, who was expecting us to arrive. His way to obtain the tome needed us breaking the seal, as it causes too much strain on one person breaking it. Using his skilled magic, Minwu is able to break the seal. Unfortunately, it's also at the cost of his own life. We end up gaining the tome, at an ultimate cost, losing a longtime ally in our fight. Minwu knew this would happen, as he fades away, explaining that it was his fate to do this. He can rest easy knowing the tome is in the hands of those who will take down the Empire. We return the tome to Finn, with it being our last key before the assault on the Empire. Ricard tags along with us as he wants to kill the man who slaughtered his kingdom as well. The time spent in Leviathan and the tower must have been some length as the Palamecian Empire got to work on something more powerful than we could have seen from them. Emperor Mateus is done with our shit and is using his magic to command a flying fortress in the shape of an enormous cyclone. This cyclone got to work as it ravages multiple towns in the warpath to Finn. Altair, Getrea, Poft, and Palum are all wiped from the map. All that's left is rubble, and you can't even enter the towns anymore. It's pretty damn bleak to say the least. Completely wiping the starting towns we saw on the adventure. The Dreadnought already makes Swiss cheese of the exterior, killing many, but now the towns are flattened. Any NPC we got to talk to are all dead now. Even the random encounters are all stronger now. Seemingly the old inhabitants is killed as well, replaced by demons in the Palamecian army. Finn took some hits as well, as the castle town is suffering many losses as well, citizens being sucked into the vortex. We arrive with the cyclone enclosing on Finn, and now we have no choice but to finally confront the Emperor, here and now. We inform Hilda, Gordon, and Layla about what transpired. Yeah, Layla survived here. Just to make it back here, I don't really know, this plot point's kind of rushed, stupid, I don't get it, it's dumb. And we need to now find a way into the cyclone. Well, we now have a Dragoon, and the last of the Wyverns finally hatched by now, so we use the special pendant to fly into the eye of the storm. Before we take the fight to Mateus and the cyclone itself, the fight with Mateus is actually kinda underwhelming. He gets taken down and dies with ease. We get our revenge though and escape the cyclone as it's destroyed. The Emperor is dead, and with the army in shambles, we seemingly have peace. Well, except we don't. During the celebrations, word of the Dark Knight taking the throne over the late Mateus and crowned himself the Dark Knight Emperor Leon. Now, to no one's surprise, Leon is the Dark Knight. I just find it funny that Maria just assumes it's her brother off his name alone. Like, I'm sure he can't be the only Leon in the entire of the lands, but that's beside the point. Knowing he wants to continue the reign of Mateus, we now have to take the fight to Palamecia proper. The Wyvern has to rest now due to the cyclone. Entering the castle from the top is pretty much our only way to access this place, as the mountains and all the enemies make it pretty much impossible to come on foot. Luckily for us though, we do see a survivor of the cyclone's rage, being the one and only Sid. Sid makes it back, barely alive, having been able to escape with the airship intact. He tells us to borrow his airship to finish off the Empire, but he wants it back when we are done. He succumbs to his wounds and dies in front of them. We have the airship now as our final gift to take on the evils. Another ally lost, however. We cannot fail now. We take the fight to the castle and begin the confrontation with Leon. Now, it is not fully confirmed why he is this way, and one can assume brainwashing or some sort of leverage was used, but it's really not fully clear. It could have been his only way of surviving and anything stronger, but now we have to prepare to fight our former friend. Before the battle begins, however, we get interrupted by Matthias, who is actually still alive and planning to take over the world still. Wait, what? Yep, you heard that right. The absolute mad lad got killed, went to hell, said nah, took over hell, becoming the emperor of hell, and now plans to combine hell with earth and conquer both. Out of pure spite! This is fucking fire! He announces all of this information to the five before him and collapses the castle to kill us all. So we are now officially boned for sure, as no one is safe, not even Leon. In another sacrificial move, Ricard calls his Wyvern to take the four out of the castle. Ricard intends to get a few extra hits on Matthias to hold back the collapsing of the castle. After some back and forth, Leon begrudgingly goes with his former friends instead of becoming rubble. The four leave to see Ricard duel with Matthias. There's obviously no way Ricard would be able to survive this fight, but he at least keeps the fiend back until the rest are able to properly escape. Palamecia sinks into the ground with Ricard and Matthias in tow. Since one of those bastards already survived getting skewered in a cyclone prior and is apparently now ruling hell, we know he still lives, but we lose another ally in the process. In place of the castle rises a new one, adorned in crystal, now called Pandemonium. This palace links from hell and ain't exactly possible to enter this one by air. Leon does get convinced to drop the tension a bit and officially rejoins the party to permanently strike back at the Emperor. Discussing options on how to proceed lead us to reaching a long-fabled passage into hell. Opening up to the Emperor's interference, the Jade Passage, a channel that falls underneath a small lake linking to hell itself, is open. This is allowing the denizens of hell to roam the earth, but we can reversely do the same. We get part 1 of 2 dungeons as our final dungeon proper. Jade Passage is not super interesting to mention, except for a few things we see combined with Pandemonium as well. The dungeons are pretty long and grueling, but offer some extra challenges in return for having some banging equipment. A bunch of extra bosses are here to face on. The ones I specifically wanted to mention are in Pandemonium, and are a bunch of mythological demons in the real world, like Beelzebub and Astaroth. These guys are practically Matthias' little bitches now, I guess. Also, a zombie Borgon lies here as well to just get back at us. Of course, he's piss easy again. Lastly, aside from the cool visual design of Pandemonium, this song is so damn good. Give it a listen. At the apex of this castle lies the very Emperor we have been chasing this entire game. His new appearance is nothing less than demonic, as you would expect. The final battle is pretty tough, as you could assume. He has a lot of abilities to restore his health from sapping yours, so hopefully you can outpace the tyrant. It is solid if you spent time grinding, especially working on the ultimate spell. You can destroy the Lord of Hell like he was nothing, and the four succeed. The four friends we saw escaping the Empire's minions so long ago, Furion, Maria, Guy, and Leon, all destroyed the Lord of Hell. Matthias is defeated once and for all, and the party leaves the palace. The entrance to hell gets closed off at the very least, and the monsters sorta disband. The crew makes it alive back to Fynn, where Hilda and the rest congratulate the party. As one could expect, the fight for the actual characters is really still not over, as they must work to rebuild what they have lost in the war. Leon, though, leaves the others behind. When Maria asks him to stay, he denies, stating that too much has happened between them and he cannot in good faith stay here. Furion is sent as a mediator by Maria, but has faith in Leon as well, and his resolve. He sees off his friends, stating they will meet again and wait with open arms for the return. Leon vanishes henceforth. Guy, Maria, and Furion stick back with Fynn to help rebuild the world to something they used to know. As they exit the throne room, though, memories of those lost in the war flash by, as if watching over the survivors. We see images of Joseph, Ricard, Minwu, and Sid, all watching over them presumably. Credits roll, and we can assume peace for the rest of their lives at the very least. We see an interesting angle for sure here. I for one really like the story of Final Fantasy II. I think it's groundbreaking in some points, with a diverse set of interesting characters. Of course, nowadays we have the luxury of the immense amount of games to say we don't really need this story and it's nothing special. Of course, it's harder to pin for that time since I was not alive yet, but it's a bit more grounded of a story as we saw in some regards. Even in the Final Fantasy lineup, it hits similar strides to other stories, even up to having some similarities to games like 16. I think it's a good time and very solid entry in a franchise of stories that have really hit or miss plots in my opinion. Having the villain be present throughout is nice. Having named characters with varying depths is nice. The world that Final Fantasy II builds is awesome. Totaling all this, however, is something I'm sure many have thought or commented on something in between. This is a video game. The story being good or bad means jack shit if the gameplay is ass. And well, it is not great. I would not go as far to say it's irredeemable, but it's significantly a step down from the older brother that had a simple and effective formula. I'm all for innovating, but sometimes the if it ain't broke don't fix it mantra is just as efficient. I said it with Quest and I'll say it again here, the concept has some merit. I see the idea just cannot be executed for this game properly. At first, when replaying, I did not have much of an issue with the game. I dare say I was having a lot of fun. The second half though shows its hand with how the system is stacked against the player, especially with the dungeons. This is not the worst game ever, but it cements itself as having a reason why so many disregard the game entirely. That being said, I still haven't answered, is it worth playing? And it really remains in the hands of each person. Not a great conclusion, but I like the game enough that I might replay it at some point. But somebody who doesn't care to hit every Final Fantasy like they got OCD, then I would say pass on this one. There are better entries, the first being one of them. If you do play it, we got plenty of re-releases mimicking the original Final Fantasy. Cutting to the chase, the Pixel Remaster, as always, is the best bet when comparing accessibility to quality of life and all that jazz. However, here remains some cool content missing from other versions. The PSP and GBA's Dawn of Souls copy come with additional content post-game. A really cool addition I wanted to mention was the Soul of Rebirth story. It takes place in tandem with the end of the game for Final Fantasy II. You control 4 of the heroes we lost in our adventure, battling through a purgatory-like place, mimicking the final dungeon for the base game. Minwu, along with Joseph, Ricard, and Scott, are the 4 who will battle here, and eventually take on the light form of the Emperor at the same time as Firion and Co. battle the dark version. Both sides of the Emperor are twisted, but victory results in the team finding solace in the afterlife. It wasn't needed, but I like it a lot, and yeah, it's mainly copy-paste with a new palette for dungeons, and it requires you to play more Final Fantasy II, but hey, I think it's neat enough of a package to at least bring it in there. Honestly, something like Persona 3 and the Answer story for post-game, I think it's some good ways to wrap up some plot points, but the gameplay itself is god-awful. That is a topic for a different day, but I have some PTSD with the insta-kill fuckers in the Answer. As the title shows, it's a mixed bag of a game. Many will dislike it, I understand, but it holds some solid stuff along with holding some other starting points for the series. See staples like Dragoons and Cid. Chocobo's even made it here, skipped on that by total accident too. I'll leave it with an unfinished conclusion of you decide for yourself if the game is worth the time. Try it out if you at least maybe have the Pixel collection. It may not be a groundbreaking success like many of its series, but hey, we wouldn't be here without it. For better, and for worse.